Hello there. Karen Del Maestro here, your health and transformation coach, breast cancer, BRCA2 thriver, and self-care expert. And I want to thank you for joining me here for day 3 of our 5-day self-care tune-up, a little pre-holiday self-care tune-up, right? So it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon here in Florida, and I don't know if you can tell how dark it is right now. I've got all my lights on above me, in front of me, and this is how dark it is, guys. We've got another hurricane on the way, and it's already dark and windy outside. So I'm going to hope that the internet gods play nicely while we're on our call right now. And then just an FYI, for the rest of the 5-day self-care tune-up, I have automated everything. So regardless of whether we lose power or not, you are still going to get all of your trainings and everything else that you need. Okay? I had you in mind. All right. So what are we drinking today? If you're on live, say hi. Hey, I just noticed I'm holding this up. This is actually a really special mug to me. Can you see? This is all of the Disney characters as anchors. Now, fun fact, the week before my double mastectomy, I went on my first cruise ever. It was something we had planned for a while, and it was a week in Alaska on a cruise. And I literally got back on Sunday. My double mastectomy was on Monday. But my doctor said, go, go, go. Put this cancer thing on the top shelf. Don't worry about it. Not quite sure how I meant to do that. I think I did a pretty good job, to be honest, but still it's always there, right? So this was a mug that I picked up from the Disney cruise up in Alaska. If you do get a chance to do it, it was quite spectacular and quite breathtaking. So I feel very fortunate to have that memory prior to my surgeries. But that's not what we're here to talk about today, right? We are here today to talk about, hi Susan, water. What's the water? Did I ask a question about water? I don't know. Susan has put in the comments here, guys, for those of you who are thinking like Karen might have lost her mind here. Susan's put in the comments, she just said I ... water. So I may have asked a question and not realized it, but let me know, Susan, what you're referring to. Otherwise, I won't be able to sleep tonight. I'll be thinking about it. But we're here today to talk about the link between the lack of self-care and breast cancer. Okay, this is what we're going to be talking about. Now, I'm wondering, I asked what you were drinking. Thank you, Susan. We all have breast cancer brain. Thank you, my dear. I appreciate that. You're drinking water. Excellent. Because I know that at the beginning of this self-care tune-up, that was one of the things that you said that you wanted to keep being conscious about. So you go, girl. Well done. Okay, so the link between self-care and breast cancer. I'm wondering, for those of you who have been diagnosed with breast cancer, this is relevant whether you've been diagnosed, if you have a genetic mutation, or if you just want to minimize your risk of breast cancer. This is relevant to every single one of you. So please don't ignore this, even if you have not been diagnosed, okay? It is really important, really, really important. Now, when I was diagnosed, as somebody that has worked in health and wellness for over 20 years, I research for my clients all the time. I'm often called the missing piece of the puzzle, right? I'm trying to figure out somebody's health journey, what's going on, how the best way that we can approach it. And so you can imagine when I received my diagnosis, what happened. And it wasn't at the beginning, it was later on when I knew what kind of breast cancer, when I'd had my double mastectomy, when I knew specifically what kind of breast cancer. And I started to connect some dots that not many people talk about, okay? Like I looked at probably some off the wall things and I kind of listened as to what made sense to me and my trainings and my education and all of these things. And one of the things that I came across, and I know that Dr. V actually talks about this a lot in her programs and on her podcast and things like that too. Dr. Veronique Desailliers, the Breast Cancer Conqueror, I believe is her podcast. But she talks about the work of a gentleman by the name of Dr. W. Douglas Brody. Now, Dr. Brody is an integrative cancer therapist. And he did the work of over 28 years, right? Observing thousands and thousands of cancer patients, but looking at their personalities. And what he did was he actually put together a cancer personality checklist. So this is what I want to go through with you today, because on this checklist, there are 7 personality traits. And I want you to see how they link to our lack of self-care. Okay, because you're going to see it pretty clearly. And my goal for this is certainly never for you to turn around and say, oh my gosh, I caused my own cancer. Please do not do that. Or I'm going to cause my own cancer. This is fuel for you to feel empowered to change some habits, such as self-care, so that you can minimize your risk of getting diagnosed again. Okay, so please use it in the way it's intended. It is certainly not, because none of us intentionally go out to get cancer, right? None of us. And we would never choose that. So please do not blame yourself. That is not why I'm sharing this. I'm sharing it for you to feel empowered to know that there are things that you can do, okay, to help minimize your risk should you choose. Okay, so we're going to go through them. Like I said, there's 7 of them. Get your fingers going. I'm going to ask how many you can relate to. And by the way, I will give you a heads up. At one point in my life, no longer because I've done so much work on self-care, but at one point in my life, I could relate to all of these, all of them across the board. So buckle up. Here we go. Let me grab a sip of my tea first. Ginger peppermint. All right. So number 1, being highly conscientious. Now, what does that mean? It means you might be dutiful, responsible. You're the responsible one. You take on a lot of responsibility. You're caring. You're hardworking, and often above average intelligence. So keep your fingers going. That's just number 1, okay? Number 2, you tend to carry other people's burdens, right? Taking on extra obligations, but also often worrying for others. Oh my gosh, I wonder how they're going to manage with that. What are they going to do? What if that happens or this happens? Right? It can look like that. That's number 2. Number 3, having a deep-seated need to please. Oh my gosh, this was me for sure. Spent decades of my life wanting to make others happy and tending to be people pleasers. Now, we're going to be talking a little bit more about that tomorrow. But also having a great need for approval, right? Looking for that from other people, looking for that validation from others. Number 4, a lack of closeness. Often having a history of a lack of closeness with one or both parents, sometimes later in life, and it can result in a lack of closeness with a spouse or with other people who might normally be close. Okay. Number 5, harboring toxic emotions. harboring long suppressed toxic emotions such as anger, resentment, hostility. Typically, the cancer susceptible individual internalizes, suck it up, get on with it, keep busy, these emotions, and has great difficulty expressing them. It totally used to be me, right? We talked about, our teapot earlier this week and what happens when our teapot gets drained. We get bitter, we get angry, we get resentful. When we're still trying to take care of other people, we don't have the energy. Number 6, you react adversely to stress. And what does that mean? It means unable to cope with big stress, often experiencing an especially stressful event about 2 years before the onset of the detectable cancer. And often what happens is we're unable to cope with what becomes the last straw of years and years and years of suppressed stress. Again, not knowing how to deal with it, sucking up, getting on with it, brushing it off. Come on, pick yourself up, put your big girl panties on, all the things that we tell ourselves to just keep going. Get on with it. There's people who are worse off than you. These are all things that you might be saying that can show that perhaps you react adversely to stress. And finally, in our list of 7, I hope you've kept your fingers going, is deep-seated emotions, showing an inability to resolve deep-seated emotional problems and conflicts. Usually, these deep-seated emotions and conflicts arise in childhood, which means that we're even often unaware of their presence when we're an adult. They're just inside. We haven't dealt with them yet. We haven't healed them. We haven't worked our way through them. So that's our 7 on our cancer personality checklist. So let me run through them quickly again. Being highly conscientious, number 1. Number 2, tend to carry other people's burdens. Number 3, having a deep-seated need to please others. Number 4, having a lack of closeness. Number 5, harboring toxic emotions. Number 6, reacting adversely to stress. Number 7, having an inability to resolve deep-seated emotions. Now, if you're on live with me or if you're watching the replay and would like to share how many of those relate to you, let me know. So let's just, as you're doing that and you're putting in the comments, how does this relate to our lack of self-care? Well, if we are being dutiful, responsible, caring, and hardworking, typically that focus is not on us, right? The focus is outward. Okay, so that is not self-care. There is a way to do it, but most of the time, most of us, until we learn the way to put ourselves first, that focus is outward. When we're carrying other people's burdens, we're taking more and more and more on. I'm seeing a couple of 7s here in the comments. Thank you for being honest, guys. Like I said, I used to be these too. Is it connecting some dots for you? But please, again, it's about knowing now, okay, so this is not helping me when it comes to my risk of cancer. What can I do to change it? That's all it means. You're in the right place. You've got the right person guiding you along the way, because I no longer do these 7. Okay, so you're in exactly the right spot. When we have a deep-seated need to please others, we're looking again at other people. We're not looking at ourselves, right? We're using our energy and we're pouring and pouring and pouring to everybody else's cup, not our own. Having a lack of closeness with one or more parents. Now, you may say, Karen, what does this have to do with self-care? Well, as people pleasers, we actually start out as parent pleasers. That's where things like be a good girl comes from. work hard, otherwise you're not worthy. When we're not close to a parent, we have this need that we're born with, right? To be unconditionally loved by a parent. And so what are we doing? Are we focusing on trying to make that parent happy? Most of us are. Yeah, most of us are. So that's where the lack of closeness gets linked to our lack of self-care. Toxic emotions. So many of us struggle to express how we really feel. First of all, being even aware of how we feel, because we're so used to looking and asking other people, how are you doing? How are you feeling? What can I do to help you? Versus looking inward and saying, hey, Karin, how you doing? Again, I used to be so good at sucking up my emotions. Suck it up, get on with it. It was probably a mantra of my life for decades and decades. I do not do that anymore. I feel my feelings. I know that they're valid no matter what they are, as are yours. And I always try to move my way through them. Now, I think I had shared, for those of you that are in the Healthy Living After Breast Cancer Facebook community, as we recently went through Hurricane Ian, I was broken open. Some really big toxic emotions, some big anger was coming out for me. Now, it's never good to feel those things, but I like it because I'm no longer harboring it in my body. So I'm grateful for that experience to get to release that. And yes, I do talk to a therapist, and we are continuing to work through that and discover what it was, what it's about, where it comes from, all of those good things. So, and then reacting adversely to stress. How many of you, myself included, went through massive amounts of stress prior to your breast cancer diagnosis? I did. A year before, through the month, my breast cancer diagnosis, I was next to my mom's bedside in the UK. Just a week prior, she'd been diagnosed with liver, lung, stomach, and skull cancer. 1 week prior to her passing away. I'm in the UK next to her bedside, holding her hand as she's passing. The day after my mom's funeral, my brother had to have life-saving surgery, also over in the UK. He was given a 50-50 chance of living. He was in hospital for a couple of weeks. And the day after he came out of hospital, I get a call from my husband, who at that point was in Orlando, Florida, back in the US, telling me not to worry. He'd been in a motorcycle accident and he was in the hospital. Well, he almost lost his right arm. For 2 months, we didn't know if they were going to be able to save his right arm. All of that and so much more, which I won't go into right now, but it's compounded because of other circumstances. You'll learn more about that December, January time, because I'm going to be facing some things that happened during that time that are going to be really powerful breakthroughs for me. But all of that happened within a month period, 1 year exactly before my breast cancer diagnosis. So when people say to me, Karin, does stress cause cancer? The answer is no. And if you Google it, you'll always see that answer, no. However, the inflammatory response and the hormonal response that our body has to those huge adverse stress events, just like Dr. Brody discovered, and the inability to cope with it because it was the straw that broke the camel's back, then those cancer cells are given what they need to grow. I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of women who have been diagnosed with breast cancer, and let me tell you, and especially with hormonal breast cancer, there is a link between massive amounts of stress prior and their diagnosis. I see it all the time. It doesn't mean that it's relative for everybody, but I see it frequently. But of course, are we focusing on ourselves when we're in that kind of stressful thing? No, literally, we're trying to get through the day. We're just trying to get through the day. My focus during that time was Karen drinking enough water. That's all I could focus on. It was so traumatic. So traumatic. So, and the last one, right? Having these deep-seated emotions is again all coming down to us not being able to tap into how we really feel, which again is lack of self-care. Self-care, again, remember our definition of self-care is the conscious act we take to promote our physical, mental, and emotional health and well-being. So when we're talking about emotions that we haven't been able to process, this is all part of self-care, right? So versus just saying, I'm going to suck it up, I'm going to get on with it, I'm going to go back to doing what I've always done, it's important that we take time to acknowledge that there are going to be times in our life where things are hard. And it's okay to say it's hard, it sucks. It probably triggers some other emotions for you from different times in your life. This is all normal, but we want to make sure that as we're presented with those opportunities to deal with those things, that we say, yes, I matter enough. Self-care. To look at those things now. I hope that makes sense, right? So it's really, really important. And it's why I focus so much on self-care, is because there is this very direct link between not taking care of ourselves and the things that are on the cancer personality checklist. Now, if you would like this checklist, by all means, just send me a message, let me know in the comments. I'm happy to share it. I do have it on a one-pager if you would like to see it and check it off. With the condition that you don't use it to blame yourself for a breast cancer diagnosis. It's not your fault. It's never your fault. You didn't intentionally do it. And like I said, very few people are talking about this, but I think it's really important when we are looking at staying healthy, when we are looking at lowering our risk of getting breast cancer or a recurrence, whether we've been diagnosed with a genetic mutation like a BRCA gene. Like, to know these things gives us the power to start to change them, right? That's what this 5-day tune-up is about. Helping you start to change these habits to help you. I've always got in my head, everything that I share is to help you lower your risk for recurrence or for breast cancer, period. So I hope that makes sense, and that you are now kind of spurred on to say, okay, what can I do in this scenario? How can I show up differently? What can I do differently? And if you need help with those things, these are the things that we kind of cover in Thrivership School, my group coaching program. This is where we do the deep work so that we are looking at overcoming these personality traits and starting to put ourselves first, no matter what, so that we can lower our risk for recurrence. Or if you're living with metastatic breast cancer, these are, again, it's all about staying healthy. All about staying healthy. Okay, so again, if you would like that checklist for the work of Dr. Douglas Brody, let me know. Other than that, tomorrow, like I said, we're going into day 4, and tomorrow we're going to be talking about how to know for sure if you are putting yourself on the back burner to take care of others. Got another list for you tomorrow. And tomorrow will be a pre-recorded video in case I lose power, because look how dark it is already. And it's only like 3:24 right now. So just in case we lose power from this storm, you will have a pre-recorded video tomorrow ready to rock and roll. It will be up on your replays and everything else. just in case we lose power, you will not be left in the lurch. Sound good? Okay, good. So that was it for today, guys. Day 3, the link between the lack of self-care and breast cancer. Thank you to those who are on live with me. If you're watching the replay, feel free to put any comments, ask questions, or anything else. If you're watching the replay from the email, feel free to just hit reply and send me an email. If I lose power, I will get back to you in a couple of days whenever we get it back. But I hope that this has got you thinking, got your cogs going a little bit on some things that maybe weren't on your radar before. For me, this connected a lot of dots. And so, and why I focus so much on what I do in my coaching practice and in the Healthy Living After Breast Cancer Facebook community has a lot to do with this list. So thank you for watching, guys. You're welcome, Susan. Thank you for being here as always. Cheers to your water. And somebody's saying they'll take the list and I'll watch the replay. I will look in the group to see who that is. And again, I'm your host, Karin Del Maestro, host of the Healthy Living After Breast Cancer Facebook community. Thank you so much for watching. And you will see a recording tomorrow. Have a great evening, everybody. Bye for now.